Have you ever been part of a new project, maybe joined a new team at work, or even started a brand new relationship, and you just went like way too far, way too
Oh,
fast?
absolutely.
Right, like
Yeah.
long before anyone bothered figuring out the actual ground rules. You know that feeling?
Yeah, that sudden cold realization of, oh, wow, we skipped all the introductory steps here.
Exactly. We barely know each other, and we just leap right into the absolute deep end.
It is a totally terrifying kind of acceleration,
It really is.
because you find yourself in the middle of this intense, chaotic situation, and you're just completely unmoored.
Yeah.
And the reason you feel so unmoored is because those foundational boundaries, the basic agreements that tell you who you are in relation to these other people, they haven't actually been built yet.
Right, you're basically trying to navigate this super complex dynamic without a map.
Exactly.
And usually when that happens in our real lives, it is a catastrophic mistake that we deeply, deeply regret.
Oh, for sure.
But, I mean, what happens when that kind of reckless, uninhibited acceleration is actually the foundational text of a legendary television show?
That is the big question.
So today we are diving into a retrospective look at a very specific and honestly very notorious piece of sci-fi history.
A really fascinating piece of history.
Yeah, we're talking about the 1987 Star Trek The Next Generation episode, The Naked Now.
Right.
It is Season 1, Episode 3. And just to set the ground rules for our deep dive today, the statute of limitations on spoilers for this particular hour of television expired sometime during the Reagan administration.
Yeah, we are well past the spoiler warning phase.
Exactly. So we are going fully unapologetically into the plot.
Fair warning to everyone listening, right? If you haven't seen it in the last 40 years, we're giving it all away right now.
We really are. So our mission today is to analyze the anatomy of a massive creative gamble.
And it is massive.
It's huge. We are looking at a show that decided to do an uninhibited, everyone gets drunk, completely out of control storyline before it had even established who any of these characters were when they were perfectly sober.
Which is an incredibly bold structural choice.
Right.
And to understand why it's so bold, you have to look at how television normally works. I mean, typically, an everyone loses their minds narrative relies entirely on the audience knowing the baseline.
Sure.
Think about like a really rigid, strict character on your favorite show. You need to know exactly how tightly wound they usually are to appreciate the shock of them acting wildly out of character.
Right, so if they dance on a table in Season 4, it's a hilarious, shocking breakdown.
Exactly.
But if they dance on a table in Week 1...
They're just a wacky person.
Yeah, they're just the wacky guy on the show.
Precisely. So doing this in Episode 3 is basically the storytelling equivalent of jumping off a cliff into a dark canyon before you've even confirmed there's water at the bottom.
Wow, yeah.
You are asking the audience to care about the subversion of character traits that literally haven't actually been established yet.
Okay, let's unpack the mechanics of this. Because
Yeah.
to really grasp how bizarre this creative gamble is, we have to look at the inciting incident.
I do.
Like, how does a crew of highly trained, hyper-competent professionals actually end up losing their minds in the first place?
It's quite the story.
It starts with the deeply weird mystery of a science vessel called the SS Tsiolkovsky.
The setup is actually pure horror, if you think about it.
Oh, total.
The Enterprise is sent to investigate this research ship because it has gone completely silent while observing a collapsing star.
Right, very spooky.
And when the crew beams over, they find a ghost ship. Everyone is dead. The bodies are frozen solid.
Just a horrific scene.
But the cause of death isn't a hostile alien species or like a tactical mistake during a battle.
No, it is so much more absurd than that.
It really is.
The entire crew is dead because one infected crew member deliberately blew the emergency airlock hatch while the ship was in open space. Right.
And her motivation. She simply thought it would be, quote unquote, fun.
Just for fun.
I mean, it's the space equivalent of rolling all the windows down on the highway and then acting shocked when the wind hits you.
Yes.
Only the wind is the infinite freezing vacuum of deep space.
What's really wild is how the episode treats this catastrophic failure of basic human survival instincts.
Yeah, they really just gloss over it.
It's essentially just background texture. The final log recordings they recover from that doomed ship are just filled with giggling and terrible decisions.
So much cabling.
Yeah, and behavior that you can really only describe as completely, tragically uninhibited.
Which really begs the question, like, what exactly makes a highly trained scientist think opening a window into a vacuum is a fun afternoon activity?
Right.
That comes down to the contaminant itself. Dr. Beverly Crusher, the chief medical officer, brings some samples back to the Enterprise,
Uh-huh.
and she realizes there's a bizarre contaminant in the water supply. It's a polywater variant.
A very specific variant. Yeah, essentially a complex chain of water molecules that somehow acts like incredibly fast, incredibly mean alcohol.
Mean space alcohol.
Exactly. It strips away your inhibitions instantly upon contact.
And here is where the massive procedural breakdown happens.
Oh, it's so bad.
Dr. Crusher gets infected through her suit before she can adequately warn anyone.
Right.
And what does she do? She wanders the ship in a complete daze, actively touches several people, and thoroughly spreads the polywater around.
She just touches everyone.
Yeah, she's completely ignoring every single biological containment protocol known to 24th century medicine.
And the craziest part, this isn't even a new disease.
No, not at all.
This is what blows my mind. The history of this specific polywater infection highlights a colossal failure of institutional memory within Starfleet.
It really is fascinating here, yeah.
Because this exact scenario happened decades earlier to Captain Kirk's crew in the original series, in an episode called The Naked Time.
Right, Kirk's crew literally dealt with this exact problem.
They figured out how to synthesize a cure, and Dr. McCoy formally wrote it up in the medical logs.
But Starfleet, an organization that is ostensibly obsessed with protocols, logs, and procedures, apparently failed to circulate the memo.
Yeah, the memo got lost.
They failed to circulate it widely enough for a chief medical officer on the Federation's flagship to just have it on file.
Wait, hold on, though. Let me push back a little here.
Sure.
We're talking about a utopian sci-fi future.
Supposedly, yes.
They have faster-than-light travel, they can beam human molecules across vast distances and reassemble them perfectly.
Oh, yeah.
But you're telling me an entire ship of the best and brightest nearly dies because of a lost PDF?
Basically, yes.
How does an advanced civilization function with that kind of inter-office communication?
I mean, it is the ultimate bureaucratic nightmare.
It's hilarious.
But it also highlights a very recognizable, very human flaw hiding inside this sterile, technologically perfect future.
That's a good point.
Technology can evolve. Warp drives can be perfected. But administrative oversight, the simple act of properly filing the disaster report so the next guy can read it, is apparently a universal constant.
Well, it's so true.
If an institution doesn't actively preserve its own memory, the next generation is doomed to repeat the exact same mistakes.
Literally the next generation.
Literally.
So we have this bureaucratic nightmare creating a biological one. But the real chaos isn't the space virus itself, right? It's what the virus hits.
Exactly.
What happens when this space alcohol actually hits a cast of characters that we barely even know?
And this is where we get into the meat of that massive creative risk we talked about earlier.
Yeah, the big gamble.
Using a high-concept premise like this as an excavation tool so early in a show's run is incredibly dangerous.
Why is it so dangerous, exactly?
Well, the goal of a virus that lowers inhibitions is to strip away the professional facades and find out who these people really are underneath.
Right.
But the answers the writers found were incredibly rough, precisely because the characters themselves were still unfinished.
They were just sketches.
Yeah, they were excavating a foundation that hadn't been poured yet.
But despite that roughness, I mean, there are flashes of absolute brilliance that end up saving the material.
Oh, there are some great moments.
And it's mostly thanks to the actors elevating a very, very messy script.
Mm.
Let's talk about Patrick Stewart as Captain Picard.
Such a good performance.
Stewart manages to delay getting infected for a long time, and he plays it so perfectly. He looks like a man walking carefully through a house he knows is full of traps.
That is such a brilliant way to describe it. It is a masterclass in subtle physical acting.
Yeah, just his body language.
You can physically see the rigid control Picard is trying to maintain as the chaos escalates around him. His posture stiffens, his movements become hyper-deliberate, and when the polywater finally does start to affect him just slightly, we get this incredible, almost entirely silent interaction with Dr. Crusher.
Oh, the doorknob moment.
Yes.
This is easily the best 15 seconds of the whole setup.
The unspoken history between Picard and Crusher is immense. Before the show even starts, she was his best friend's wife.
Right, Jack.
Her husband, Jack, died under Picard's command. So Picard has these incredibly complicated, deeply buried feelings of guilt and affection for her.
Which is heavy stuff.
And the polywater almost forces that door open. She comes to his quarters, clearly affected, seeking some kind of release.
And a lesser show, or like a less confident actor, would have turned that into a massive melodramatic confession scene.
Absolutely. There would have been screaming and crying.
Right.
But instead, Stewart simply puts his hand on the doorknob. He pauses.
Yeah.
You can see the internal war on his face. He thinks better of it, and he just closes the door.
Wow.
In 15 seconds, without saying a word, he grounds the entire chaotic, goofy episode in a very real, very adult, emotional reality.
It's so good. And on the completely opposite end of the spectrum, you have Brent Spiner as Data, the android.
Oh, Data.
The ship's security chief, Tasha Yar, who is perpetually disciplined and hypervigilant, gets infected and comes looking for Data to basically seduce him.
Which is such a weird dynamic.
And Spiner plays the entire encounter with this, like, bewildering sincerity.
He really does. He isn't resisting her, but he isn't entirely reciprocating in a human way either.
Because he's a machine.
Because he can't. He's genuinely uncertain, treating the entire highly charged sexual situation as an interesting new data point he simply hasn't cataloged yet.
And the comedic timing the morning after.
Oh, it's perfect.
Tasha awkwardly implies something about their encounter, and Data responds with that absolutely perfect, completely deadpan delivery, confirming to the room that he is, in fact, fully functional.
It takes what could have been a totally cringeworthy scene and just transcends it.
It really does.
We also have to acknowledge LeVar Burton's performance as Geordi LaForge.
Oh, definitely.
Geordi is infected early on, and as the virus takes hold, he ends up wandering the ship without his visor.
Yeah.
For context, Geordi is naturally blind, and the visor is a high-tech sensory band he wears over his eyes that allows him to see.
Yeah, it's a huge part of his character.
When he takes it off, he is completely vulnerable. In a lesser script, a stumbling, blind character in a comedy of errors episode would absolutely be played for cheap physical laughs. It would be a punchline.
But it's not treated like a punchline at all here.
Not at all.
It's handled with this quiet dignity and, honestly, a sense of real tragedy. When the crew finally finds him locked away in engineering, the prevailing emotion in the scene is relief, not humor.
Exactly.
The tonal balance required to pull that off in the middle of a wacky virus episode is incredibly difficult, and LeVar Burton just anchors it beautifully.
He really does. However, this raises a really important structural question,
What's that?
If the actors are working this hard to elevate the material, what happens when the writing fundamentally fails the premise of the characters? Because as much as there are flashes of brilliance, there are also total, undeniable misfires.
Yeah, we definitely have to look at the collateral damage here. And the handling of Tasha Yar is definitely the most glaring issue.
It's rough.
Think about Tasha's backstory for a second. She grew up on a horrific, failed colony planet dominated by rape gangs.
Yeah.
She spent her entire young life surviving pure trauma, eventually escaping and building up this rigid, unbreakable discipline just to become a Starfleet officer. Her uniform is her armor.
And in the very first episode that really centers a narrative around her, the writers introduce a space disease that immediately strips away all that hard-earned trauma response and discipline.
Right.
And for what? Simply so she can seek physical intimacy with an android she barely knows.
It's just such a massive waste of character history.
It really is.
You could try to be generous and say, well, the show is trying to show us what she suppresses, that beneath her armor, she's actually deeply lonely and starved for connection.
You could argue that, sure.
But the episode itself doesn't actually seem interested in exploring that psychological depth. It happens, the disease wears off, and she spends the rest of the episode acting completely fine.
Like nothing happened.
Yeah, it takes this profound, dark trauma and uses it as a cheap vehicle for a one-off romantic hookup.
It reduces a complex psychological defense mechanism to a plot convenience. And she isn't the only character the writers struggle with. Look at Commander Riker.
Okay, this part is actually hilarious when you think about it.
It is.
Riker's infected behavior is literally indistinguishable from his normal, everyday swagger.
It's true. Yeah. The polywater is supposed to make you uninhibited, reckless, and overconfident.
Right.
But Riker already operates at absolute maximum confidence at all times.
He's always at a 10.
The virus essentially hits him and has nothing left to amplify.
Exactly.
And then there's Counselor Troy, who the writers essentially just write out of the episode altogether. She's largely absent.
Which accidentally makes a really funny point about her usefulness in a crisis.
Oh, for sure.
If the ship's empathic psychological counselor isn't around during a ship-wide emotional and mental breakdown, what exactly is she there for?
It's a very fair question. And if we step back and connect all of this to the bigger picture, this entire character, Gamble, the Brilliant, subtle moments with Picard and Data mixed with the total mishandling of Tasha and Troy. It serves as a perfect time capsule of television writing.
How so?
You are watching a creative team in real time trying to figure out the difference between character development and character chaos. They are throwing paint at the wall to see what sticks, largely because they don't quite know who these people are themselves yet.
Okay, so we have a multi-billion-dollar flagship full of deeply compromised people, a completely chaotic character landscape, and oh yeah, we haven't even mentioned the actual plot crisis happening at the exact same time.
A ticking clock.
Right. The Enterprise is sitting next to a collapsing star that is generating a massive shockwave heading straight for them.
Yes.
Who steps up to save the day while the senior staff is wandering the halls acting like college freshmen?
Enter Wesley Crusher.
The 14-year-old boy, Wesley, who is completely unsupervised with a free afternoon, just decides to gather some spare parts in engineering, builds a makeshift tractor beam, and physically seizes control of the flagship of the Federation.
It is the absolute ultimate manifestation of the boy genius trope.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though. This Wesley is a genius trope actually works here just barely because it's completely new.
Yeah, it hasn't worn out its welcome yet.
Exactly.
In isolation, in episode 3, it feels somewhat clever. The kid built a thing, he bought the crew some much-needed time while the adults were incapacitated.
Right.
But the show relies on this exact same structural crutch. Wesley saving the highly trained adults so heavily over the next 2 seasons that looking back on this moment, it sours retroactively.
Oh, totally.
It feels less like a fun character moment and more like a crutch.
It's a band-aid for the plot, just like the ultimate resolution of the space plague itself.
The magic cure.
Yeah, Dr. Crusher manages to sober up just enough to synthesize a cure. She loads it into a hypo spray, runs around injecting everyone, and then everything just resets to zero.
And we really have to talk about the financial and structural reality of 1980s television to understand why that happened.
Oh, well, this is important, yeah.
This reset to zero is a hallmark of the era's syndication model.
Right.
Back then, local television stations bought the rights to air these shows, and they often aired them completely out of order. If an affiliate in Omaha aired episode 4 before episode 2, the story still had to make perfect sense.
So they literally couldn't have long-running consequences.
Exactly. The episodic format dictated that you could put your characters through the most harrowing, traumatic, emotional wringer imaginable for 44 minutes. But by minute 45, the status quo had to be perfectly cleanly restored for whatever episode aired next week.
Wow.
There is no emotional cost. There is no accumulation of trauma or experience. They simply move on as if nothing happened.
Which brings up a massive architectural flaw in the show itself, something they wouldn't actually fix until season 2.
Oh, I know what you're going to say.
The Enterprise is missing its bartender.
Yes. The Guinan vacuum.
Exactly. For anyone who doesn't know, later in the series, the ship has a communal lounge called 10 Forward.
Right.
And it's run by a bartender named Guinan, who is this incredibly wise, deeply empathetic listener. But in season 1, 10 Forward doesn't exist yet, and Guinan isn't on the ship.
And that absence highlights a missing piece of the show's psychological architecture.
It really does.
When you strip away the professionalism of Starfleet officers using a virus, you reveal how emotionally isolated they actually are. They don't have a neutral space to process their feelings.
And they have nowhere to go.
They don't have a Guinan to give them perspective when they're stressed. So when the polywater hits, all that pent-up isolation and unexpressed emotion just explodes into sheer chaos.
Literally every bad decision made by these characters in this episode could have been avoided if they just had a reasonable conversation with a wise bartender beforehand.
So true.
But I'm trying to wrap my head around this reset to zero thing, though.
Okay.
If an episode hits the reset button so hard that it leaves absolutely no lasting consequences, aside from maybe Data and Tasha's encounter, which is rarely mentioned again, does it actually matter?
That's a great question.
Like, if nothing accumulates, if the characters just wake up the next day, clock in, and go back to normal, isn't the whole exercise just a massive waste of the viewer's time?
That is the crucial question, right?
Yeah.
If the plot doesn't matter, what's the point?
Yeah.
The verdict on The Naked Now is really interesting. Looking back at it critically, it is not a great episode.
No.
Strictly speaking, mechanically, it isn't even a good one.
Yeah.
But it is an incredibly useful one.
It's a revealing mess.
Precisely. Those flashes of greatness, we talked about Stewart's subtlety with the doorknob, Spiner's deadpan brilliance, Burton's quiet dignity. Those moments are the reasons viewers stayed tuned in. When Honestly, they probably should have changed the channel.
Right.
When you watch it now, you are essentially hearing the creative engine of the show turning over.
Yeah.
It isn't quite catching it. It's sputtering, it's backfiring, but it's getting closer with every rotation.
So what does this all mean for you, the listener? Why should you care about a messy, uneven, 40-year-old sci-fi episode?
Good question.
I think it's a deeply reassuring reminder about the actual nature of success.
Yeah.
We look at Star Trek: The Next Generation now as this monumental, highly polished, legendary success in television history. But it didn't start that way. It started as a messy, awkward, highly unfinished first attempt.
It is a testament to the absolute necessity of the rough draft.
Ex-
If you want to achieve greatness, whether you are building a new team at your company, starting a new project, or trying to create a piece of art, you have to allow yourself the room to be a revealing mess first. You cannot skip the awkward excavation phase.
You can't just leap directly to the finished product. You have to stumble around in the dark a little bit, maybe even act a little uninhibited before you figure out what your own ground rules actually are.
Well said. And as we close out this deep dive, I want to leave you with one final image to chew on.
Oh, I love this part.
It goes back to Data's reaction the morning after the chaos.
Okay.
He is a purely logical android. He experiences something profoundly messy, highly intimate, and chaotic that he simply cannot categorize within his existing parameters.
Right, doesn't compute.
So what is his response? He formally files an incident report on his own romantic life, logs the paperwork, and moves on with his day at Warp 9.
He literally uses an administrative task to speed away from emotional complexity.
Think about that for a second. If a machine's immediate response to the messy, uninhibited reality of human connection is to literally use bureaucratic paperwork to distance itself,
Oh.
what does that say about how we, as humans, use logic, rules, and daily protocols to categorize and distance ourselves from our own chaotic emotional experiences?
Wow. We use the ground rules to hide from the mess.
We really do.
It always comes back to jumping off that cliff. You can try to write all the incident reports you want. You can hide behind your daily routine, but sometimes you're still just falling hoping there's water at the bottom.